I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Well, hello, nature nuts, how are you? It's feeding time for the old leopard geckos right now. So you get in there, Bluey Louie, and I'll get you a cricket. You know, I think a lot of people who keep pet reptiles, they do so because they like to watch them eat. They like to watch these little reptilian predators close in on their prey, swallow something the size of their own arm in a single bite without chewing. Very dramatic. Of course, today it doesn't look like they're hungry. Sometimes they'll eat things the size of their own head. You know, it's amazing when you think about reptile eating. I've been accused at times of being a rather reptilian eater, but it's almost as if someone my size were to take a slab of meat like this and wolf it down in one bite without a single bit of chewing. Boy, that's a scary thought. That's a lot of meat. Enough to make a guy into a vegetarian. There are reptiles, though, in this world who could take this piece of meat and swallow it in one gulp. And I'll bet you know what they are. Yeah, here's an animal that can pack away a bit of meat. That's our subject for today, the crocodilians. You know what I mean by crocodilians, animals like crocodiles, alligators, caimans. Caimans are like South American versions of alligators, and gavials, long-snouted crocodilians from Asia. We're just going to focus on the ones that you can find in North America, and of course here, the most familiar, the most beloved of the crocodilians is the American alligator. Alligators are not only wonderful creatures, they're a big tourist attraction, and they're just plain big, period. When an alligator's around, everybody notices.
Well, that's one egret that won't be swallowed whole today.
Let's have a look inside the head of one of these crocodilians. You already know what's inside my head. Just a bunch of fluff. These are the nostrils. These are the eye sockets. This is an alligator skull. The eyes float freely in here. They're held only by muscle? Know what I mean? Muscles and connective tissue. These holes here, they're just holes in the skull. They're called temporal openings. Very important for people who study the structure of animal skulls. Comparative anatomists study these kinds of details. Now, have a look at this thing. The skull of an animal is not just one big bone. It's made up of many, many different bones, and you can see these wiggly lines here. Those are the lines where the bones join together. They're called suture lines. I mean, even the lower jaw. Have a look. You've got suture lines down there. The lower jaw is made up of more than one bone as well. Our lower jaw, it's one bone. Their lower jaw, many bones. These sorts of differences are the things that comparative anatomists look at when they're examining skulls. Have a look inside here. This is a fairly old skull, so a lot of the teeth have fallen out. But you can see the teeth at the front of the jaw, they're much longer and more pointed. Teeth at the back of the jaw are more blunt, but they're just intended to hold the prey, and when the jaw is shut, they shut with tremendous force. This smooth area in here, that's where the jaw muscles attach, and these jaws just come down, and once you're in those jaws, you're toast. That's just the way it is. But what I'm trying to get at here is that comparative anatomists looking at those sorts of details have concluded that the closest relatives of crocodilians are the dinosaurs, for one. And remember, the crocodilians evolved about the same time as the dinosaurs. They were around couple 100 million years ago. They were also related to the flying reptiles, the pterosaurs. And then, of course, to the birds, because the ancestor of the earliest bird, it was a dinosaur. Both crocodilians and birds, they lay eggs, so do lizards, but they lay eggs in a nest, and they look after the nest. They guard the eggs. The eggs are looked after by the mother. The mother actually looks after the young. That's something that both birds and crocodilians do. Another thing they do is they communicate with sound. You know how a male bird in the breeding season will sing his song, and he'll announce his territory and his desire to find a mate. Well, a male crocodilian, a bull crocodilian, will bellow and roar in the breeding season as well, and baby crocodilians will chirp to their mother, and the mother will make sounds back to them. It's the same as it is in birds because they inherited the characteristics from the same common ancestor. They also, well, what else can I say? They hold their legs under their body when they run. Crocodiles don't run with their legs out to the side like a lizard. They hold their legs right underneath the body. Oh, and I forgot to show you where the brain is. The backbone, the spine attaches right there. That's where the brain goes, right in there. No brain there now. It was about the size of my little finger. That's not much of a brain. That's why you should never fully trust a crocodilian.
For their body size, crocodilians have smaller brains than birds and about the same mental capacity as most dinosaurs.
Well, here we are in a cypress swamp, and to me this just looks like a wet part of the swamp, an everyday, ordinary, average pond, but apparently it's not. Apparently this is a gator hole. The reason this is a gator hole and the reason that this pond is here in the first place is because the gators, they wallow around here, they do their gator thing, and they create a little wet spot, which is very important in the wintertime when things get dry in this environment. It maintains a pond, deep enough water so that other animals can use it as habitat for themselves. And of course the gators, once they've created this beautiful habitat for birds and other animals, then they've got birds and other animals to eat themselves. So it works out very well for everyone except for the occasional, critter that gets devoured. I was also told that way back in the swamp there, in the springtime, the big females, they'll nest back there. And you know what they do? It's a really interesting thing. They pile up a mound of rotting vegetation, scoop out a hole in the middle, lay their eggs there, and then, as the vegetation decomposes, it warms up. And that incubates the eggs until in late summer they hatch. The mother opens up the mound, she hears their chirping, and their touching family life begins. Here's what a baby alligator looks like. It's a beautiful creature. And you know, the nice thing about a baby alligator, unlike so many other sorts of baby reptiles, baby snakes, baby turtles, baby alligators, they're not on their own in this world. They're part of a family. The mother alligator stays with the babies, or the babies stay with the mother, and the mother will, in some ways, protect them and look out for them for up to 2 years. I mean, they still have to catch their own food and all that sort of thing, but they do have a mother they can rely on. And she recognizes the babies partly by this beautiful color pattern. They have a black and yellow banded pattern, very different from the adults that are just kind of mud colored. And I think they're very, very attractive. Have a look at the belly, beautiful belly, excellent. And there's also a significance to this sound that the little guy is making.
The distress call of a baby will attract any mother alligator within earshot, and the mothers protect the babies from danger.
I want you to have a look at this one. Isn't this beautiful? I borrowed this one, and it's just a dandy. Right up there, there's its nostrils, and they close when the alligator goes underwater. And you can see that. We can sort of bug him, and they'll close up his nostrils. The eyes are the same way, and they can shut right down. This doesn't seem to hurt him at all, but he'll shut his eyes down. You can also see when he opens his eyes, not only the beautiful look in the eye, but also the nictitating membrane. That's kind of like a second eyelid that comes in from the side. It's kind of like a little snorkel mask for the eye, and it protects the eye from damage when the alligator's swimming. You never know when you're going to poke into an underwater twig or something like that, and their eyes are just as delicate as ours. The teeth, you can see the teeth from the upper jaw, all very sharp teeth for grabbing and ripping, not for chewing, not for, they don't bother chewing their food. They're alligators. Come on. And here, where all those openings are in the skull, you can't see any openings here right now, but that's where the ears are. But you do see all the bony plates along the back and up along the head. These are actually little bones in the skin. They're not part of the actual skeleton proper. They're part of the dermal armor, as we call it, and they're actually little tiny bones within the skin, tremendously good for protecting the alligator from some sorts of injuries. Beautiful feet. There's a 5-toed front foot, a 4-toed back foot with a little bit of webbing to it. Not an awful lot of webbing, because when they're swimming, they just put the feet against their body and they swim with this big, powerful tail, and that's how they propel themselves through their environment. So, you know, you'll never guess what I'm sitting on. I'm sitting on an alligator barn. Never even seen an alligator barn before. It's very warm, I'll tell you that much, and it's warm because it's home to about 250 little alligators, about the size of this one. And they're swimming around in there. They're happy and healthy. They're eating commercially prepared alligator diet, and this barn is part of an alligator ranch, which is in turn part of the Babcock Ranch here in southern Florida. They take the eggs that they use to produce their alligators from the wild. In the wild, the eggs have a failure rate of about 90%. Here they have a success rate that's over 90%, so if the wild populations are healthy, then you can take some of the wild animals away and raise them for meat and leather. The good thing about this is that it gives a motive to protect the wild alligator populations as well as their wetland habitats that might otherwise be modified to form some other sort of habitat. And this is extremely good, not only for the alligators, but for all the other wetland organisms in this part of the world. And it's also completely, well, I shouldn't say completely, but almost completely eradicated the problem of alligator poaching. This particular alligator ranch is also associated with some wonderful swamp buggy tours that take you out into the alligator's home environment and tell you a great deal about why they like it here and what they're up to. Dick Friedrichs here. He's with Babcock Wilderness Adventures, and he's a professional baby alligator impersonator. Why don't you give it a try here?
Try.
They're going the exact opposite direction too.
No, we have to change our plans.
But you do get them coming in.
They will. They'll hear that noise and they'll come around. Now they might want to eat the baby. That could happen. But they do hear that noise.
Yeah, I
and
guess the males are particularly bad when it comes to cannibalism, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And they'll eat each other. Alligators will eat anything that doesn't eat them.
Down in the Everglades, down in Cutthroat Bay, lives a long, lumpy lady named Alligator May. She's the kind of a gal you wouldn't want to meet at any time of night or day, in a swamp or on your street. She started as an embryo, safe inside an egg, hatched out in a hurricane, nearly blew the nest away. And she grew, and she grew, 5 feet long, 6 feet long. Now she's a mean mother, carries babies in her mouth. I wouldn't bother the meanest gator in the South. No! Then along came a bull gator with murder in his eye. He was lurking like a lumpy log. He could hear her babies cry. She was churning up the water, crashing with the tail. He saw her and skedaddled, because next time she'd be bigger still. She grew, and she grew, 8 feet long, 12 feet long. Now she's a mean mother, carries babies in her mouth. I wouldn't bother the meanest gator in the South. No. Down in the Everglades, down in Cutthroat Bay, there's a bunch of mean gators. Stay out of their way. There's a long, lumpy lady named the Alligator maid.
Well, now let's do some gator watching. Alligators don't do much in the wintertime, and they don't eat much either. In fact, most of the time they just lie around, not moving, basking during the day when the air is warmer than the water. But when night begins to fall and the air cools down, these pied-billed grebes have to watch more carefully where they swim. That's when the gators move into the water and begin to hunt. In the early twilight, this foraging duck didn't see the approaching alligator gliding along like a log through the water. The duck continues to probe for food while a little blue heron searches for crayfish and minnows nearby. With only the top of its head above water, the alligator moves into position. Finally, it takes a breath. The duck sees the ripples. A moorhen swims by just as the alligator submerges, changing its tactics one last time. The moorhen senses the duck's agitation, and together they scan for the gator with their heads held up high. But after a while, they return to their feeding as the sun goes down on the swamps of southern Florida. Alligators are generally not dangerous, but you should never feed them, swim with them at night, or approach nesting females. Okay, well, what's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? This critter behind me is a crocodile. It's an American crocodile, and we are very lucky to see it. Have a look at it. It doesn't have the same sort of snout as an alligator. The alligator has a big, broad, wide snout, and the crocodile has a narrow, sleek snout. As well, with the alligator, the upper teeth overlap the lower jaw, and all you see are the upper teeth. With the crocodile, they kind of interlock. Might seem kind of technical, but it's fairly easy to tell them apart. As well, the crocodiles, especially when they're younger, instead of having a mud-colored or a banded black and yellow pattern, they're kind of mottled brown, and even this one has a more, it's a grayer look than most of the alligators than you see around here. It has a totally different look in its eye. A little bit of a psychotic killer look in its eye, but This is not a man-eating crocodile. This is not like the very dangerous crocodiles in Africa or Australia. American crocodiles are an endangered species, and they're protected by law. The interesting thing about that is, so are the alligators. The alligators are doing fine. They're not endangered, but if you protect the alligator, then people are less likely to harm the crocodiles by mistake. Works well for both of them. Well, will you get a load of the spectacle of crocodilian stuff we have before us right here? Bizarre stuff. Bizarre stuff, you have to admit. Now, even though the alligator leather business is a perfectly legal thing in the southeastern U.S., these are the kinds of things that you probably don't need to buy on your next vacation. If you're traveling through Central America and you wonder whether you need a stuffed, spectacled caiman holding up an ashtray, probably an ashtray made out of some endangered piece of wood sitting on some kind of fur with a snakeskin border around the bottom, it's a grotesque caricature of a once beautiful wild animal. Do you need one of those? I don't think so. This one here is kind of interesting though. If you look on the underside of the jaw, you'll see it has a little number. That's its tag number, and that tells you that this was a Florida alligator, or from somewhere down in the southeast, and that it was legally and correctly harvested.
The CITES permit system regulates the movement of crocodilian products across international borders and helps protect endangered species.
I've got some slides here from my last trip to Trinidad. Our last trip to Trinidad, my wife and I went bird watching. And one of the weirdest things we did while we were there was to go bird watching at a sewage lagoon. Usually I don't like bird watching at a sewage lagoon, but this was a great sewage lagoon. All sorts of phenomenal birds and spectacled caimans swimming around in the water, shall we say. Caimans are very much like alligators. We watched one suddenly lunge up out of the water, ram its snout into the bank, and catch something and eat it. And we'll never know what it was that it caught and ate, but boy, that was a rip-snorting moment in my personal experience with crocodilians. I like those kind of moments. That's why I'm a nature nut, and I hope you are too. See you again soon. Care for some popcorn? Delicious.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.